Hello friends, this video on digestion and absorption part 18 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. So let us start our discussion on large intestine. So now by the time the food will reach large intestine, the process of digestion is all complete. The food has been completely digested. That is, the food has been completely broken down into simpler substances, and also the simple substances have been absorbed by the small intestine. So what is left over? Now the point is, the amount of food which has been eaten by the person, not 100% of it gets digested. Some part of the food remains undigested. For example, if a person has eaten some plant parts, it is not that somebody eats only flesh. They might eat some vegetables as well. So when you eat some vegetables, so they have a lot of cellulose, they have a lot of fibers, some of which are not digestible by the human digestive system. So what happens to those undigested part? So that undigested food is carried over to the large intestine. So the food, when it reached the small intestine, it first went to duodenum, then it went to jejunum, and then finally to ileum. So now from ileum it will get transported to the large intestine. So this is the last part of the digestive tract, and it is the shorter in length but larger in diameter when compared to the small intestine. Since it is larger in diameter, that is why it is called large intestine. So if you look at this picture, this green colored structure is the large intestine. So if you see, the thickness of large intestine is more when compared to the thickness of the small intestine. So no digestion occurs here. Complete absorption takes place, because the absorption which has taken place in small intestine, that was good enough, but still, like, some of the minerals or some of the water are still left over. So incomplete, whatever absorption is left over, that is completed in the large intestine. And also the process of egestion takes place. That is, the undigested food material is taken care of. Whichever cannot be digested, that is taken care of. So now this large intestine, if you look at its location, it is located in such a way that it wraps around the border of the abdominal cavity. So this is your abdomen. So almost it is like a boundary to the abdominal cavity. It starts from here and then it forms a boundary like this, and it ends at anus. So let us look at the structure of the large intestine. The large intestine again is divided into three parts. So the first part is cecum, which is like a small sac-like structure. So here you can see this portion is cecum. So it is a sac-like structure, or a reservoir kind of a structure, you can say. So inside this, the bacteria lives. Interesting, right? It holds the symbiotic microorganisms, because you would have often heard of bacteria which lives in our intestine. You remember? Sometimes they even cause food poisoning, or sometimes they cause problems or diseases also. But there are many microorganisms which lives inside our body. They take their nutrients from our body, and they also help us in the process of absorption. So here, this is their house. So cecum is the place where the symbiotic microorganisms live. So they get their nutrients from our body, and they also help us. How do they help us? I'll just tell you that. So cecum is the first part. The second part, now here another important thing is, ileum opens here through the ileocecal valve. So here again you have a valve which is like a door, which remains closed all the time except when the food material has to pass in from ileum to cecum. This passes the undigested food material here. So whatever could not be digested, that is passed on to cecum. The next part is colon. So what happens here? So this is the tubular structure. So colon starts somewhere from here and it continues till here. So this entire portion is colon. So colon is the longest part of the large intestine, you can say like that, because it is just that the starting portion is cecum and the terminal portion would be the last part, that is rectum. Otherwise the entire middle portion is colon. So this is again a tubular structure. It is further divided into three parts, that is ascending colon, transverse colon and descending colon. So this is ascending because it is going up. So this one is ascending colon. This part is transverse, that is longitudinal, I mean this way, that is transverse, right? So this one is transverse colon, and this portion, it is coming down, that is why this portion is descending colon. Now since colon forms the major part of the large intestine, that is why many a times colon term is used as a synonym to large intestine. And then the last part, that is rectum. So rectum is the terminal part and this part is rectum. So what happens here? Colon opens here, so colon ends up here. And colon passes on the food material to rectum, and in rectum what happens is it opens outside through anus. Digestion happens here, that means the undigested food matter is thrown outside of the body through anus in the form of feces. So that is the purpose of rectum. So rectum actually helps in storing the feces, and then it discharges it outside through the opening or through the anal opening, and this process is known as digestion, that is throwing out of the undigested food, throwing it out of the body. So these are the three parts of the large intestine. Now we have to see, when the complete digestion has taken place, almost 70% of absorption has also taken place. So what big deal happens in large intestine? So what happens in cecum, colon and rectum? So let us have a quick look at the role of large intestine in the digestive process. Now no significant digestion occurs here, as I mentioned before also, because digestion process gets completed in the small intestine itself. So what happens here? Some absorption of water takes place from the undigested food material. Now when water gets absorbed from the undigested food material, what remains is the solidified undigested food, and this solidified undigested food gradually form feces, and this feces is thrown out of the body through anal opening. So that is the process, the overall process that takes place in large intestine. Now let us talk part by part. Now as soon as the undigested food enters cecum, what happens is cecum is the place where the microorganisms live. Now these microorganisms sometimes digest substances which were not digestible by the human digestive system, but the bacteria can digest them. Right? Now there might be certain substances which cannot be digested by human beings, but they can be digested by bacteria. So the bacteria will digest all those substances. So that is where the symbiotic relation exists. Bacteria gets benefited because it is getting its food. Human beings get benefited that some of the materials are getting digested, so they don't really bother. It does not cause any harm to human beings. So that ways some digestion take place here also, but that digestion doesn't happen by human beings, but it happens by the bacteria or the symbiotic microorganisms which are present here. Now during the bacterial fermentation, this bacterial fermentation gradually lead to the emission of some gases like carbon dioxide and methane, which sometimes produces a foul smell when they are emitted in the form of gas. So this happens as a result of this bacterial fermentation. So now followed by this bacterial fermentation, formation of feces take place. Now how formation of feces takes place? Two things happen. One is all the water in the undigested food material get absorbed. So the undigested food is solidified. On top of that, bacteria acts on that. So bacterial fermentation also snatches out some of the materials out of it. So whatever is remained now, that is something which is waste, that is something which cannot be digested by our body. So those substances need to be thrown out of the body. So now this feces is expelled from the body through the anal opening. But before being explained, the rectum is the place where the feces are stored. So the rectum stores the feces and later it eliminates by the process called defecation. So here in the rectum, feces are stored and later they are eliminated by a process called defecation. that is throwing out of feces from the body. So basically this is the role of large intestine. So if you see, the main purpose of large intestine is egestion, that is throwing out the undigested food material from the body. The second is absorption of some water, and the third is providing some food to the microorganisms which are residing in the cecum of large intestine. That's all. So that is all about the large intestine. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.